A lot of things have happened in the past few weeks, and we've got brand new dev diaries for both Japan, Korea, and the Yuan dynasty, complete political maps and many other maps as well. And we've got quite a few new insights into what the Asian parts of EU5 will look like. Now, the political map is fairly straightforward. The Japanese shogunate controls basically the entirety of Japan, with the exception of Hokkaido, which is not technically owned by anybody. We just have the Ainu people here. So then you might be asking, where exactly are all the daimyos? Well, the daimyos are still here. They are just being represented as buildings that own certain areas of the map, all of which are still subject of the Japanese shogunate. At least that's what I understand from some previous dev diaries and some replies in the comments, if I'm not mistaken, by Johan himself. On the opposite side of the sea here, we've got the Kingdom of Goryeo, which is the precursor to the Joseon dynasty. Now, the Kingdom of Goryeo was actually multiple times at war with the various Mongolian nations, as well as even at war with the various Chinese entities. It was one of the last attempts by a Korean-based kingdom to take back the ancient borders of the Goguryeo kingdom of old before the unification under Shilla of the Three Kingdoms. You see here a variety of different entities to the north of Goryeo. Some of them are of different ethnic backgrounds. I'd say the more northern ones like Ula and Yehe would be Jurchen, whilst the southern parts would likely be Korean. So it's not necessarily straightforward here with just one or two kingdoms and that's it. We also of course have the Ryukyuan kingdoms, which apparently there's three separate ones in the islands of Okinawa as we know it today. In contrast with EU4, Japan, as is mentioned by Roger, starts with the Ashikaga Takauji, which after the failed restoration of imperial rule by the Kenmu emperor, one of his generals, Ashikaga Takauji, is the one that establishes his own shogunate in 1336, 1 year prior to our start date, a shogunate that would last for a few hundred years up until the Tokugawa shogunate, as we know, takes over for a few more hundred years until the Meiji emperor actually does succeed in restoring imperial rule over Japan. One interesting thing about this is that the emperor had to flee the capital, and thus in E5 there's going to be a northern and a southern court in Japan with two opposing emperors and the shogun fighting for legitimacy. So although it appears unified at first glance, Japan hides many internal divisions. Also further south, the kingdom of Ryukyu is not yet unified, and there's three mountain kingdoms of Hokuzan, Chuzan, and Nanzan, which hopefully will unify into Ryukyu. We also have a society of pops, the Udege people. And funny fact about this is that Udege in Japanese means arm hair. Anyway, we also have the Ainu people and the Warka people as society of pops. So we basically have a bunch of Jurchens in Manchuria, and we have the Ainus to make it very straightforward. The dynasties, as you would imagine, Ashikaga, because it's the shogun that is shown as the real leader of the country. Then we have the Wang over in across the sea here, and a variety of other different dynasties based on likely what the name of that particular nation is, right? I'm not sure if I should even call them nations. And we also have here a much better sized map of Ryukyu. There are quite a few provinces, both in Korea as well as in Japan. Japan's density of provinces is super high. I think it's actually a little bit higher as you go towards the central and the southern parts, and for some reason the Tohoku northern parts is less provinces, better yet less locations. I'm assuming to just illustrate how there's more density of population in the south compared to the northern parts of Japan, right? These are the areas as they stand. We got the Japanese coastline, the Sea of Japan, Korean western coastline, and then Japan itself is divided in the historical regions more or less. We have Tohoku, we got Saikaido, Sanyodo. Okay, I take that back. It's aside from Tohoku, none of these actually are the current ones, right? We have Tokaido, Tosando, Hokuriku, Do. All right, interesting. Do is actually a special type of administrative term. Right now in Japan, there's only Hokkaido, which is translated roughly into English as a circuit, and it basically just means like a bigger area that is seen as one administrative entity, right? But yeah, interesting why they went with this and not with the classic Kansai, Kanto, Chubu, etc., right? I'm actually curious. Terrain-wise, there's a quite quite a few mountains in the central part of Japan in Honshu Island, and we've got mountains between the Korean Peninsula and the Jurchen areas. My question is, why so few mountains? Honestly, Japan has a lot of mountains. I live in Japan, as some of you know, and there's mountains throughout the entire country. In fact, Ryukyu has more mountains than Honshu has proportionate. I would have made the entirety of Ryukyu mountainous if it was me, like, actually. I mean, just take a good look at this. Like, this is all mountainous ranges. Look at that. This is not even like small mountains. It's pretty significant mountains. Even here, more mountain ranges. The entire country is basically covered in mountains with the exception of a few areas that are farmlands and flatlands around Osaka, around Tokyo, and so on, right? But then I guess the question is, what exactly is a mountain in EU5? That's the real question. Maybe there's a specific cutout, and after that particular cutout, it's not mountains anymore. Maybe that would explain it. I don't know. The country is pretty much completely covered in forest. That is very, very accurate. Glad to see that. Kind of the same today, actually. Mostly forests around here. And it's subtropical with a little bit of continental in the northern parts. Also accurate. It's very, very humid in Japan as well. Something not many people are aware of. Developed map mode. It's fairly average, I'd say. Not too developed, but not too underdeveloped. Like the Jurchen areas are very, very low development, as you can tell. Roger mentions that the development increases as you go further north. Natural harbors, we've got quite a few. One of them is to the southern parts of Hokkaido, and then we've got a lot of them around the Tokyo area, which is definitely a natural harbor, as is the Osaka area, Nagoya, a few other areas. Japan does have a lot of potential as a naval superpower, as it should, because it was and still is, in my opinion, one of the biggest naval powers out there in modern times even. This is the cultural makeup. We've got Japan divided into 4, I guess 5 if we put the Ainos, different cultures. We have Tohoku as a culture, Togoku, Saigoku, and Kyushu. So compared to EU4, we've got 2 new ones. We have Tohoku and Kyushu, which is separate, because in EU4 we only have Saigoku and Togoku, right? I'd say, sure, why not? I would have honestly just made it all Japanese. But this works too. It's a little bit arbitrary because if you're gonna do this, you might as well divide it into more to actually show the historical region. So Saigoku, Togoku would definitely, could possibly at least be divided again into 2 more, pretty much east-west on both sides here. Now we do have Ryukyun as a separate culture as well. And we've got, oh, this is surprising. Okay, so there's significantly less Koreans in here. I was expecting like a lot more. We've got a lot less than I expected, especially in the northern part. Is way more Jurchen than I would imagine to have seen Jurchens. As you would expect, we have a new religion, the Ainu religion, because we don't have animist anymore. All the animists have been divided into regional animist variations in essence. We also have Mahayana, and we have, I'm actually not sure what that is. I gotta get back to you. Some sort of shamanism, I guess. And of course, we've got Shinto in the Japanese islands themselves. Roger does mention this Shinto that we have in Japan is under the Buddhism umbrella and is to be treated as Buddhist Shinto. And he also mentions that we have the Utaki religion for Ryukyu. Here's where it gets a little bit juicy. We've got a lot of rice in Japan. It's pretty much half rice, half fish from what I can tell here. So that means your people are never gonna starve in the Japanese islands, but you're also gonna have a bit of a hard time doing anything because I am not seeing that many resources. I saw like 2 or 3 provinces with lead, 1 with iron, or like 3 with iron. That's it. A little bit of copper. I think that might be saltpeter. I'm not really sure. That's it. Another copper here. Okay, yeah, no, this is actually very few raw materials, especially. Oh, we do have 1 gold mine here in around the Tokyo bits. I'm seeing a lot more diverse and interesting resources in the peninsula here, so that might mean as Japan, the meta would likely be for you to expand in these lands in order to actually get a decent amount of resources that you can exploit in essence, right? Market wise, we've got the Izumi market, which includes pretty much only Japan and half of Okinawa. The other half apparently is a part of the Chinese market. We also have something Wang market and Kaesong market. Population wise, 9.6 million in Japan, 2.5 million here, and roughly around 1 million in all the other smaller entities to the northern bits. And now we get an explanation of how the daimyo system works. They're considered extraterritorial countries. Now there is a map mode for this, and you can see all of these particular daimyos and how exactly they're represented within Japan. Roger says says the samurai clans in Japan are represented as extraterritorial countries. We tried to be as close as possible to their distribution of territory in 1337. Not an easy task. So remember, this is basically technically a country within a country, more or less. There's 143 clans, not including Ashikaga, plus 2 extra for each of the imperial courts that are present at start. So that's a lot. Related to this, each clan will pledge its allegiance to either the north or the southern court, mainly based on their historical allegiances, but allowing a little bit of leeway. Yellow are the north court supporters, blue are the southern court supporters. And let's check. Oh wow, wait a second. Southern court support, why are most of the southern court supporters in the north? That's the actual question here. This shows that we're gonna have a little bit of a tumultuous start with Japan, and the unification of Japan, well, proper consolidation and unification of Japan is gonna be even harder than what you imagine, right? This is also a more detailed map with all of the clans shown over here in the various provinces of Japan. And roughly a week or so earlier, they also presented the map of China, which is under the control of the Yuan dynasty in 1337. As you can tell, they have pretty much the entirety of China, and whoever is not directly controlled by them is a tributary of sorts, like the kingdom of Dali here is a tributary, Dai Viet. All of these Tibetan parts over here are tributaries, and they go all the way north, as you saw earlier, even above into the Jurchen lands are controlled by Yuan. These are the society of pops represented mostly around the southern hemisphere of China. We have some more famous people, let's say, like the Zhuang people, the Miao people. And why do I say that they're more famous? The Zhuang people are related to the Thai people. In fact, they speak a Thai-based language, so it's likely that modern Thailand and Laos originated in the area around where we see the Zhuang people, and they just migrated south, while some of them decided to stay behind, or maybe it's vice versa. Who knows? Maybe some of those from the south went up north, right? Miao people are also famous because if it wasn't for the Miao people, then cats would not be able to speak, so that's why they are famous. Dynasty is Borjigin dynasty, of course, as is in the other great hordes. Not gonna go through the locations because there really is an insanely high amount of locations. It's absolutely ridiculous. Terrain-wise, I really like this because it shows very clearly why China got to be as massive as it was, as important, as rich as it was. It's because the majority of the eastern parts of the Chinese land is flatland. That allowed for the easy cultivation of land, easy spread of agriculture, and just a lot of abundance of food, which in turn means a lot of people being able to feed their kids and have more kids, and that's why the population is basically so high in these areas. But we also have a massive separation of mountain chains to the western parts of China, alongside some hills here as well, and of course the plateaus around the Gobi Desert and everything else to the northwest, I guess. The southern part of China is mostly subtropical. The northern and the western part is surprisingly continental, and what's even more surprising is that the plateau in Tibet is Arctic, which is not because it's in the northern parts of the world, it's because it's very high altitude-wise. So to go hand in hand with the fact that it's very flat, it also has grasslands, farmlands all around, making it even easier because you don't have woods and forests to prevent you from having a massive agricultural input, but we do have still forests and woods to the southern parts, where we also have all those society of pops, coincidentally. Developed map-wise, I think this is a bit controversial for some people, that Paradox has made the development in China insanely high, way above all the other areas of the world for that matter, even higher than some parts of Europe. I think this is accurate. It also shows how strong this part of the world is, but I think also that I cannot really give a proper opinion on how balanced this is until I actually see it and play the game for myself to actually figure out what kind of an impact this development plays in the balance of this region, or of the world for that matter, right? We've got some natural harbors, a couple in the north here, and as you progress down, you've got a lot more better natural harbors in the southern parts of Yuan. Should start calling it Yuan and not China, should I? Culture-wise, it is an absolute cluster schnitzel. We've got everything here. We got Zhao Liao, Jiu Lu, Jin, Zongyuan, Zhanghuai, Gan, Shang, Mian, Yue, Zhuang, Yi, Miao, Shinan, everything. Literally everything. RMA. What the snaps is that? I got no idea. I'm not even going to pretend I know any of these cultures. I am aware of some of them, like Hakka, Min, Yue, Miao, also Jin, but not all of them. I'm going to have to go ahead and trust the devs on this. I'm not going to give too much of an opinion because I don't really know that well what's happening here. Zhuang is a predominant culture here, which tells me that the Zhuang people, not only are they a society of pops, but they're also the majority in the southern parts here of Yuan. And I'm getting the feeling that that's the same for all of those society pops in the southern part. Look at this. This is the cultural variation in China. That is insane. Religion-wise, it's pretty much all Mahayana with some animist versions. We had moist. Oh, moist. Okay. Yao come. Moist come. Oh my god. Okay. Okay, Paradox. Do I really need to say it? I don't know, man. Maybe I don't need to say it. I think we all expect it. Be moist. Moist come. Okay. No, now they're just trolling me. They're actually trolling me right now. What's surprising though is that I'm seeing a little bit of Sunni here. Actually, a majority of Sunni here in a couple of areas. Interesting. Goes without saying from the raw materials perspective, considering how many locations there are in China, you have everything. You have everything tenfold. Every single resource imaginable, you have it in here, and you have a lot of it. And yes, there are a huge amount of locations in China, more than I've ever expected to see. Pretty much a no-brainer because there's a very high population, right? Now, I know also some people were saying in the forums that they should add more locations just because if you compare China to India, if you compare both of those to Europe, then China should have more locations. I agree with that, but I also do not want to go to NASA and steal their computer just because Skibidi on the forum wants 1,000 provinces more in China. I'm sorry. I love this. I want, it to be as proportional as possible, but I'm sure that NASA would only have a limited amount of computers for us to take from them, if you know what I mean. There are a ton of markets. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. There's a buttload of them. We got Beijing, Lanzhou, Xi'an. There's a frack ton of them. I don't know why. I actually don't know what exactly, how do I put this? I don't know if there's a limited amount of pops that you can have within a market or how exactly new markets are formed, because if you would just be able to have all of China in one massive market, that would be the most insanely overpowered market. So what's limiting that from happening is my question. Population-wise, 90 million population. Roger also mentions that despite the fact that the religion at the start is just Mahayana everywhere, there's gonna be some events in the game which will change it, and we're gonna have Tibetan Mahayana or Tibetan Buddhists as well as Chinese Buddhism as their own separate religions. There you go. Here, Tibetan Buddhism will be split and turned into own religion. Or wait, is he talking about them doing that before the game is released? I'm a little bit confused actually. Also, the Chinese Buddhism canon will be present in China, Korea, and Vietnam. I have to say, I like the way that Roger presents this because he gets what we want to know. He definitely addresses the FAQs before before people actually start asking those questions. I like that. Great work in my opinion. Now, speaking of great work, a big shout out to Yum77 on Reddit. Again, he took the time to patch together the map. So we have almost an entire map of the world. We've got all of Europe. We've got all of Africa. We're just missing the Indonesian archipelago, Australia, and that's pretty much it. I know the New World's there too, but let's face it, there's not going to be any actual important nations. They're just going to be like the Aztecs and a few other Schnappledoops, and that's it. So as far as I'm concerned, this is pretty much the entirety of the world, or at least after we get Indonesia, it will be, right? Love to see this, man. This is, once we get Indonesia, I'm definitely going to print this out, and I'm going to make a big map out of this and put it in my bedroom, because I'm genuinely in love with this. I freaking absolutely love this map. Look how amazing this is, man. This is the new 1444, guys. I mean, it's not out yet, but 1337 is going to be the new 1444, and it's going to be absolutely amazing. Probably not so great for the Byzantines, because we all know what's going to happen, but someone's got to save them, and that someone's going to be you, my brother. Yeah, that's right, Byzantina boo. Byzantium is calling for your help. Are you going to help them? You know what you can do to properly help them? Subscribe to my channel. All right, boys, that was it. Short one. I love you, and I'll see you in the next one.